What's up, everybody? I know it has been a couple weeks since my last post, but I am here, I am back. We have a bunch of cool stuff coming up, a couple music videos, a couple short films, all things I've been working on, plus a few surprises in between. But alas, I am here, I am back. And this video right now was the top requested idea that I got from Twitter, which is basically the story about how I got to where I am today in this room with that play button and that play button and just this house and everything else that I do, and kind of just what led to all of that happening, because it was an interesting 8 years leading up to this day. So I'll share that entire story with you as best I can, as kind of condensed and quickly as I can. And just right off the bat, I want to get this out of the way. I know the title says From Homeless to YouTube Famous, but I do not think I'm YouTube famous or famous at all. It was just the best title I could kind of come up with for the story of what happened. Just want to get that out of the way right now. But yes, I was homeless a couple of times during the events that led up to this very moment in time, right here, right now. And without getting into the details, I guess the main theme that I want to get across is that no matter what happened and no matter what decision I made, every opportunity I said yes to. Any opportunity I saw to kind of better my life, I made sure I pursued it. And no matter what, I kept a positive outlook and attitude throughout all of this. So that is the one thing you have to keep in mind throughout everything I'm going to tell you, is because I was always looking at the next goal, the brighter future. It was always there. I had no idea that YouTube or social media in general was ever in my forecast. That was not a reason why I came back to California. I grew up here. I wanted to move back here because I love the weather and I love the people and the beaches and the mountains and everything else about it. So I came back to California for those reasons and nothing else. But somehow it led me all to here. In this very room, at this very moment in time, in this very video, and all of you that are watching it. So yeah, I came back here when I was 19 years old, and the only stipulation I had was that my dad was willing to help pay for the school that I wanted to go to, but that was it. So I basically had about $1,500 to my name, and I booked a $300 flight, and I came back to California. And I had a friend who I'd been in touch with since I'd left like 5 years prior, and he gave me a week. And he's like, you can stay with us for a week. It was his parents' house, and I was like, fair enough, I'll take it. So with $300 a flight and another $1,200 left, I moved out to California, and I stayed on his couch, and I did my best to use Craigslist and whatever else I could to buy a car and find a place to live. And basically I found a car that was $700. It was a Mitsubishi Eclipse. It was a manual. I had no idea how to drive manual, but it was the cheapest car I could find. And so I bought that car, and then Alex, who I was living with at the time, taught me how to drive manual. I also at that time didn't understand what a clutch was, and that it was like a thing that could progressively burn off and then disappear. And apparently the Mitsubishi that I had bought barely had a clutch, and then me learning how to drive it burned it out. And then about 3 days later, I no longer had a working car. So that was my first decision right off the bat. Somehow was able to sell the car for $500, took a $200 loss. And I said, you know what, my school's in Huntington Beach that I'm gonna go to is a massage school. So I just found a place to live in Huntington Beach. That was like $450 a month, and I just walked. I was like, car problem solved, don't need insurance, don't need gas, don't need a car, don't need potential breakdowns, I'll just walk, take the bus, whatever it is. And the first place I lived in Huntington Beach was actually a shed. Like in someone's backyard. It was an actual, like a tool shed. That's literally what it was. It was a tool shed with a window with a little tiny AC unit in it, a carpet and a bed. And I paid a couple $100s a month to live there until the landlord found out there was someone living in a tool shed, and then I got kicked out, / the landlord told the person that rented me the room I need to leave. And then this is kind of when the rabbit hole started spiraling out of control, because from there I kind of had to, I had no place to live at this point, and I just hopped on Craigslist in the first place I could find, and I ended up living with, I'll just rattle them off. I ended up living in basically a 2-bedroom apartment with 6 other people, where I just shared the couch. That was my space, was I lived on the couch. Didn't know at the time, ended up living in a heroin house, if that makes sense to you guys. Basically the people I lived with ended up being drug dealers / addicts, and I had my laptop stolen, which was like my only possession, and it was basically how I was finding work and doing my classwork and everything else that I needed. And that got stolen, and I called the police, and the guy I lived with like threatened to kill me and put me in a chokehold, and luckily the police showed up like right as that was happening, and he let me go, and we ended up finding my laptop in a pawn shop, and that was a thing. That was a time. That was a fun time. I ended up after that living in a laundry room. Like when I say laundry room, I mean like it was a 3-bedroom house, and the laundry room was like this little triangle with like a washer and dryer, and then I slept in the little empty space. And it didn't have a door in it, so what we did is we put up a shower curtain rod and a curtain, and then at night we would close it up, and that was my room. And I paid like $200 a month to do that, and I literally lived in a laundry room. And it was just a huge portion of the time. By the way, I'm still in school at this point. I'm in massage school while all this is happening, which is like 5 days a week. It's like a normal 8-hour day. And I'm just hopping places around, trying to find any place to live, doing what I can. And then finally, I found a place that was in Los Alamitos, which is like 25 minutes away from my school. Ended up buying a motorcycle that was $600. And similar to the clutch theme, this thing has a motorcycle has a stator plate, which is like an alternator in a car where it recharges the battery. The stator plate of the motorcycle didn't work, so basically you would ride it for 30 minutes and it wouldn't recharge the battery, deplete it, and it would die. So I would literally only be able to go about 25 minutes away, and then I would have to take my battery out, plug it into an outlet, and then charge my battery before I could go anywhere else again. So that was a fun thing, and then at some point the bike started breaking down more, and I remember one day the engine misfired. Like I hit like a bump and somehow it caused the engine to like catch, or maybe it shifted, I don't know what happened, but out of nowhere it just like shifted up and just throttled out. And I got like this far away from driving into one of those major like street posts that hold the red light, green light stoplights. There was a bunch of sketchy stuff there. Oh, and I shouldn't be admitting this, but the entire time I was riding the motorcycle, I didn't have a motorcycle license. I didn't have motorcycle insurance. It wasn't registered to my name. So at any point if I got pulled over, 100% was going to jail. But it was the cheapest way for me to get around, and I took the risk, and I did it. And this was all while I still lived in the laundry room. So, you know, things were going great. Wasn't making that much money, so luckily we lived next to a Wiener Schnitzel. And if you don't know what a Wiener Schnitzel is, it's like a hot dog fast food place where you can get like 29-cent hot dogs and 39-cent corn dogs. And when you're 19 years old, 3 corn dogs fills you up, which is like $1.20, right? $1.17 plus tax. So that was like what we survived off of, was like Wiener Schnitzel and hot dogs and corn dogs and 7-Eleven Entenmann's cakes and 2 liters of Sprite. Because if you ever want to eat really horribly but get full quickly, just buy a gigantic $6 chocolate cake and a 2 liters of Sprite, and you're good for about a week on that. So yeah, there was that. A lot of weird places that I lived in. Oh, and eventually we got kicked out of that laundry room house because there were so many of us in it, and the landlord found out. We all got kicked out, and then I was back to the drawing board again. And fortunately I found another similar situation where it was a shared bedroom. Just a lot of people in a small place paying like $250 a month, $300 a month. Still in massage school. At this point I think I've moved about 7 times in about 4 months. That's how quickly this is all going. And finally I had to get rid of the motorcycle because it started just leaking oil. Like the gaskets, I didn't know anything about anything then. It would just leak out oil everywhere at this point. Like if I was just sitting at a red light, whatever, oil. Eventually just had to sell it. And fortunately at that time my mom was able to send me her old car, which was an old Jeep. And so that helped out a lot because that ended up being my home for a little while, was the Jeep. So she sent me out the Jeep. I was under the stipulation that I had to properly register it and insure it. So I got the Jeep, and that was a lucky bounce for me, having that. And by the way, I'm still probably moving around places, and eventually I got to the point where I was like, well, I have a Jeep and my insurance is this much, my gas is this much, why don't I just live in it? I was like, I live in Huntington Beach, I live in one of like the nicest cities in California, and that's exactly what I did. I lived in my Jeep. I slept in the back of it, I saved the money. I would just eat at like Burger King or whatever other fast food place I could figure out. And I went to school and I worked. I eventually found a job at a, found out later, got shut down by the federal government because the entire company was a fraud and was a scam. But I found a job on Craigslist that was selling basically like, you know, like when you get a car, you get like a 10,000 mile warranty on it or a 100,000 mile warranty on it. I was basically selling a warranty on a car after that warranty expired. So basically once your car got past 100,000 miles, this new warranty, which was way more expensive because obviously your car's more at risk once it breaks that mileage, would cover you for anything else. Turns out they never covered anything, and the entire company was a scam, and I didn't know that. I was just a dumb kid. I was like, cool, job, this makes sense, cars need warranties, sure. And I sold the shit out of them. And I was really good at my job, because what happened was I ended up educating myself on how cars work, because no one else gave a shit in the company. They didn't care. They were just there to get their little sales commission. But I wanted to, I finally had a real job in a real office and with real paychecks. And I was like, well, let's be good at this. And I learned everything I could. I learned everything about drivetrains and transmissions and engines and gaskets and shocks and struts and everything you could want to know about a car's chassis or your airbag compartments and just all these little nooks and crannies of things that I could throw at people to be like, you didn't even realize this, but this is what our policies cover. I had no idea that none of anything I was selling was real and they were just taking people's money. So that was a job that I had, and that's gonna come into play later. All of that car knowledge just somehow saves my ass about a year later. And from that point, I don't remember if I quit that job. I think I kind of got like a heads up that what I was doing wasn't legal, and somehow someone I don't precisely remember, somehow someone convinced me to leave the job before I probably got tied into it all, which is what I did. And then from there I was able to afford an actual little room in someone's house. I subletted while they were gone, and I did that. And I was on this app called Quora, which was, I think, I'm not even not saying it right. People would text in like a question, and then I would get paid to answer it. I remember it was 10 cents per answer if I could already find it in the system, or 40 cents per answer if I had to search it up myself. And that's literally what I would do. I would just go to school, and then I would come back and I would sit on my laptop and I would answer questions for 10 cents a question. And if you did the math and you grinded super hard, you can make like $12 an hour. So after Quora, I was doing that, and then finally the room I was subletting while the person was gone came back early. She was like filming some project. She came back early, it ended early, and I was out of a place again. And yet again, I was just like, well, I'll go live in my Jeep. So I lived in my Jeep until the owners of my massage school found out that I was sleeping in the parking lot at night, and they offered me a place to stay. Ironically, in their little back house shed thing, but it had a bathroom in it. It was legal, but they did me a solid there, and I ended up living in their back shed garage for free. They did me a huge favor, and I was finally finishing out massage school. It was about 6 months to finish, 9 months if you wanted like the extended. I just did the 6 months, and then I think I ended up doing like one extra class that I wanted to do. So in 6 months, I basically lived in my Jeep like 3 or 4 times. I had a Mitsubishi Eclipse, which was a fraud. The dude sold it to me knowing it didn't have a clutch in it, and then I burned out the rest. Another dude sold me basically a broken motorcycle, and then I somehow ended up selling fraudulent stuff to other automotive people. And all this was happening while bouncing around from laundry room to sheds to living with 6 or 7 people at a time to living in heroin houses. And while I'm still in massage school and I'm still hunting down jobs and I'm still on Quora, and I was doing whatever I could here and there to pick up jobs. And even while I was in massage school, I was started to like give like private massages, if that makes sense, to like family and friends that were like hitting me up, and you could rent out a massage room in your school for like $10, and then you could charge $40 and make $30 bucks. So that all happened, and finishing massage school, I was immediately able to get a job right off the bat. No shortage of jobs in the massage world. Frankly, great choice, because immediately coming out of it, you make $16.50 an hour. That is flat right off the bat, $16.50 an hour. And then on average, you make about $20 an hour in tips. So that was a lot of money for me right after living in my Jeep and bouncing around and being able to make after taxes like $30 an hour. I was like, well, I'm gonna work my ass off, because full time for massage therapy is 30 hours a week. And I was like, well, if I do 40 and I get overtime, which is time and a half, it means I make 45 an hour basically. So I did that. I ended up working 50 to 55 hours a week as a massage therapist, which if you don't know is a physical job. It's working your arms and your legs, and sometimes you get big people and you got to climb up on top, and sometimes people want deep pressure, and it was intensive labor job, and I didn't care because it was a lot of money. And I was like, well, I'm gonna work my ass off and do this. And exactly what happened. I found a place to live right behind where I worked. I had my car, but I didn't need to use it. I saved on gas, so I would just walk into work basically, or ride a skateboard over, whatever it was. And I did that. I worked 55 hours a week, and I hustled my ass off, and eventually I was able to buy nicer clothes and fix my car up a little bit because it had some problems. And I just kind of worked my way up and took every opportunity I could to make sure that I was giving myself a better life. And then I finally got to the point where I got Sparta, because I was moderately stable. I had a nice house to live in and so forth, and I got Sparta on a fluke. I just went to the animal shelter on Valentine's Day actually with a girl that I had been seeing at that point, kind of dating. Saw him, was just fell in love with the dog. I entered into a raffle, which some of you guys know if you watch the animal live stream. And I got into a raffle and I won him. And the next day came back and had Sparta. And that's kind of the start of that world. And this is kind of where my life started turning bright side up. Right? I had gotten through the worst of having no idea where I was gonna sleep, or how I was gonna pay my bills, or what I was gonna eat, or how I was gonna pay for the food I was gonna eat, or any of this. And I survived the storm of 6 or 7 months of just fucking chaos. But at that time, it was fun for me. Looking back at it, I don't ever remember sitting down and being depressed of how am I gonna do this? It wasn't, you didn't have time. You didn't have time to think, how am I going to pay for food? It was just find the opportunity and do the thing. That was it. You didn't have time to be sad, because time you spent being sad is time you wasted moving forward and progressing. And that's the same thing that I have applied through all of this. So as shitty as it may seem, or how weird it may seem, I'm grateful that I went through all of those hard times, because it makes you appreciate where you are now, and it makes you realize how great you have it now. And if I was able to work my ass off that hard then, when I had nothing, what's holding me back now? And that's the same kind of theory and mindset I held on to when I was making $30+ an hour, and when I did have a nice place to live, and I did have a car, right? So that just helped me move forward. It was well, I've already survived the storm, so let's just go deeper into it. And that's what happened there, and everything was all good and fine until the place I was living behind my work found out that I was paying them rent and they weren't paying their mortgage, and we got a sheriff's eviction, which is a sheriff's eviction means you have 3 days. So I had 3 days with the dog to find a new place to live, and the girl I was seeing at that time was renting a room herself in a house, and I was like, hey, do you think that maybe the people that you live with would let me stay there? And I didn't want to share a room with her because it was just a girl I had been dating, and I ended up renting out their garage. And I was like, well, I've lived in a storage shed, not a big deal. So I ended up renting out their garage, lived in their garage for a little while until they found out they were having another kid, and they were like, okay, you gotta go. And this is still all the same time I'm in massage school. And then her and I moved in together. And that's kind of the start of that chapter. I'm trying to cover this as fast as I can. That chapter, and then we moved in together. We rented a room jointly with Sparta, and I was still working at the massage place that I was at. I enrolled in community college. I wanted to go in and get my degree because the entire reason why I went into massage school was I wanted to become a chiropractor, and I was trying to work my way up. Figured massage therapy was a great entrance point. Couldn't afford chiropractic school, super expensive, so I decided to go into community college. They had FAFSA, which is like a financial assistance program, basically, and also had student loans, and you could only get the student loans if you were a student. So what I did is I used FAFSA to pay for my community college and also help cover a bit of my housing. And then on top of that, I pulled out a student loan, and I used that student loan to start a weird kind of business where basically all of my car knowledge that I had earned at my previous fraudulent job, I applied, and I started to buy classic Mustangs, like 1964 through 1966 Mustangs, because they were the easiest mechanically sound cars you could ever buy. There's basically 7 moving parts on them. Modern car today probably has about 150. And I took my student loan money and I bought a Mustang. I think the first one I bought was $3,600, and I sold it for $4,600 within a week. And I was like, okay, now I have $4,600, and I did the same thing. I bought another one for $2,800, and I sold that one for like $3,200. I made another $400. And I just kept doing that. I just kept buying and selling these Mustangs. Some of them didn't need any work at all. Some of them needed a couple $100s. Some of them needed full-on body work, and I taught myself how to do all of this because of the place I was renting had a garage. And I taught myself what I didn't know through YouTube, and that's kind of what I started doing. I was now working at Massage Envy while in community college, while I still had Sparta, and I was buying and selling Mustangs. And this was all building up, and I started earning more and more and more money until we got to the point where we basically were looking to rent a house ourselves, because we realized if we rented a 5-bedroom house, then in reality what we could do is if we split up all the rooms, it saves it way cheaper. And then if I were to charge an extra like $100 per room, and there's 4 of the rooms, that saves me $400, and then I'm splitting it with my girlfriend. So that's ultimately what we did, and finally we found this house that was for rent, and I pitched to them, hey, would you be interested in letting us buy it? There was a thing called a lease with a purchase option. And I just reached out to the owner and I was like, hey, you guys are, leasing it. Would you be interested in doing a 5-year lease? And at the end of the lease, everything I paid to you in lease payments, like 75% of it, goes towards the value of the house and I'll buy it from you. And they said, sure. And they said the only condition was that if anything goes wrong, you have to repair it. And I said, okay, sure, only if you drop the rent, the monthly payment down, so that way if anything does happen, I have the ability to cover it. So what happened was a house that was supposed to be like $3,600 a month of rent, I ended up getting for like $2,700, maybe $2,600 monthly payment. But if anything went wrong, I had to pay for it. But all the rooms that we were renting stayed the same price because that was the value. The people that were renting the house didn't need to know what my payment was. It was fair value. Their rooms were like $600, $700, $800, $600. Something along that lines, which perfectly covered the mortgage. So essentially, I ended up living rent-free, and I just had to pay my share of the utilities. So all the money I had made somehow resulted in me getting free rent, right, essentially. That was a huge lifesaver because that was money I didn't have to spend, which is more money I could spend on Mustangs. Alright guys, before I go any further in regards to this whirlwind of a story, and just right on par with the whole message of taking any opportunity you can, right now I need to thank Dollar Shave Club for sponsoring this video. Dollar Shave Club has always been something I've been interested in doing. This, I don't know how any of this works. It just kind of grows and does a thing. And they give you absolutely everything you need. It's not just razors. Like, I get to smell nice now. That's cool. My Fitz probably appreciates that. They give you like I didn't need shave butter. I didn't know shave butter, like you need it. I didn't know I was supposed to like lubricate, like butter my face before I shave. I just took a hard razor and I didn't even use shaving cream. And I greatly appreciate it because now I don't have to go to the store and buy it. It literally just shows up at my door. I highly recommend signing up for Dollar Shave Club if you particularly don't need it because you don't have a luscious beard like I do. Perhaps you have a boyfriend or a friend or an uncle or a father or just a dude in your class that he really needs it. Dollar Shave Club right now is basically giving away their daily essentials kit. It's just $5 a month for new members. They have 3 different versions of it that you can choose from. The one that I have right here has the executive razor handle, heavy duty razor handle. Got a bunch of blades that come with it, of course, and you have all of the cleansing needs that you might need. You got shea butter, and of course we have the overall lavender face body cleanser. They have everything you need. It's not just for beard. You guys can sign up right now at dollarshaveclub.com/Elton. So if you don't know anything about shaving, just like I don't, they do. Dollar Shave Club knows everything you need, so you can just go on there to make sure that they're fresh and clean from cheek to shining butt cheeks. Definitely want to thank them for sponsoring this video. And like I said, guys, take any opportunity you can. Dollar Shave Club asked me if I wanted to partner up, and I said 100%, absolutely, for sure, let's do it. Check out the code dollarshaveclub.com/Elton. Sign up there. I'd greatly appreciate it. Dollar Shave Club would greatly appreciate it. Anyone you send this to is gonna greatly appreciate it. We're all gonna be gratuitous toward it. Back to the story and how all this happened. Here we go. So yeah, now we're kind of at the tail end of the story, which is about to lead to the social media, because what was happening was I started doing stand-up comedy, and through stand-up comedy is where I met this guy named Waleed, and through Waleed I ended up meeting Kenny Murphy and Casey James, and we started playing kickball together, and before you knew it, Vine was a thing. If you guys don't know who Casey James is, he ended up being, I think at one point, was the #1 person on Vine. And just one day he came over and just asked me to help him film a Vine. I had no idea what it was. And I just tapped the screen. I didn't realize you had to hold down the screen then. That was my first experience ever with Vine. And then Waleed and I made a bet with each other. It was first one to 10,000 followers. Whoever won got free hockey tickets from the other person. So Waleed and I were in a competition. I remember we made the deal while we were walking to a Ducks game. We were standing next to each other. We made our Vine accounts at the exact same time. And we're like, all right, here we go. And we made a competition out of it, and I beat him by like 500 people. It was that close. Like, he was 9,600, I was at like 10,000. Something really, really close to that. And that was how Vine started for me, and straight up, the way I started on Vine was follow and follow. I was making videos, but I would follow people, and they would follow me back, they would watch my videos, and then I would unfollow them. That was it. And I don't really have shame in saying it because it wasn't against the rules. There was nothing wrong with it. People obviously ended up enjoying my videos because they got, you know, I ended up getting like 1.3 or 4 million on Vine. And it was just what I did. And the same thing, I would go through all the trendings and I would just like everyone's posts and hope that they would find mine. And that's what I did on Vine. That's what him and I both did on Vine, whether he wants to acknowledge it or not. That's what we did. And we grew our Vines higher and bigger, and that's just how that started. And the first big Vine for me was the Mall Cannonball. And I remember it got 600 likes in an hour, which was insane at that point. Like, I was #2 to Marcus Johns. And that was the biggest Vine I have, and I finally took #1 on the popular page of Vine, and it started getting like 1,600 likes per hour. And that was the first big video I ever had on Vine, and from there I was like, well, you know, I'm doing stand-up comedy, like my job now at night is to try and come up with jokes, and I was like, well, I come up with Vines. And that's literally how that all came about, was just a fluke. It was just a whole series of events that led me to doing stand-up because I was in LA and I was like, why not, I'll try it. Meeting Waleed, and then meeting Casey, and then introducing Vine, and then literally all because we made a dumb bet for hockey tickets. That was it. Like, there was no reason. I never had any intentions of ever being on the platform. I never had any intentions of being a content creator. I never even had any intentions of doing stand-up. I did it once, and it took me 6 months before I did it ever again because it made me so nervous I physically got sick from it. Like, that's the reality of it, and then I just tried it again, and so on and so forth, and Vine happened, and Vine was the same thing as buying Mustangs to me. It was if you put in money, you can make it back. Now at that time, I didn't understand that social media was ever gonna create revenue for me. I had no idea social media was ever gonna create revenue. All I knew was I wasn't paying rent, I had a good paycheck from being a massage therapist. I was like, I can afford to spend some money building these giant hand contraptions and these smack cams and buying like a fruit picking pole and attaching a foam hand to it. And I would spend like 50 to 80 bucks on a video. And the video started getting bigger and bigger and getting 100,000 likes. And I started doing crazier challenges like waxing out my beard and getting lit on fire and running through obstacle courses on fire and getting tased. And while I was still doing like normal sketches, and I was just trying to hit like any idea I had, I did it. It didn't matter whether it was dangerous or dumb or not the same genre of comedy, any idea, I did it. And I ended up posting like 350 vines, but I probably made 550 and deleted like 200 of them. But it was the same mindset again. It was like, there's an opportunity, here's an idea, let's try it. I have nothing to lose. I have nothing to lose if the idea fails. And if I spend money on it, I lose 40 bucks. Cool. You know, and that's kind of what it came down to. And every single opportunity was the same thing. Someone was like, hey, here's Vine. Cool, I'll make one. Hey, you want to do stand-up? Cool, I'll try it. Hey, you want to go, you know, it didn't matter. If any of that makes sense, it didn't matter. And I just kept pursuing everything. That was it. That was literally what it was. And as time goes on, Vine ended up creating revenue for me. Like, I remember getting offered like $200 to do a promo, and I was like, holy, what? Yeah, okay, all I have to do is use a song for, yes, I'll do that. And as Vine went on, I started getting more deals. I remember Chevy like bought one of my Vines to be in a commercial in the opening ceremony of the Winter Olympics. Like, that was nuts. That was a really good paycheck, like an unbelievable paycheck, and more brands started hitting us up. And then eventually I started realizing, well, all these people are paying for these campaigns. I was like, they're making money somehow. So I started reaching out to people that needed advertising, and I was like, hey, I know all these Vine people. If you give me a budget, I can hire them and then also pay me a fee to hire them. That's exactly what happened. They'd be like, okay, we have, you know, $10,000 to hire as many people as you can, we'll pay you 500 bucks. And I was like, cool, so now I'm making $500 to pay my friends. Right? Like, I wasn't taking money, a percentage of my friends at all. It was just like, I had $10,000 and I had to hire, you know, and that's the first time I think I ever met like Sam and Colby, was I hired them to do a song promo, and I hired Scotty and Heath and Zane and Gabby and Casey and Waleed, and like every big Viner you could ever think of, I probably hired for a job. And I was like, hey, here's a couple $100 to use a song and use this hashtag. And I did that, and it was the same thing. And then, you know, I'd also be able to hire myself at the same value that they were getting. So if like I was even followers and they were getting 400 bucks, then I was getting 400 bucks. And I was still getting paid the $500 to delegate out all these promos. And again, this is all happening while I'm still buying and selling Mustangs, and I'm still in community college. At this point, I'm getting my real estate license, and I'm still doing stand-up, and I'm managing to just pull it all off. And then as Vine kept going, I kept getting bigger. Eventually, my job threatened to fire me. My massage job threatened to fire me because I was wearing a work shirt in a video, and they went viral, and they got affiliated with it, and they basically kind of told me, they're like, hey, if you keep making these videos, we can't have you working here. And I got to a point where I had to make a choice, and I chose to quit my job. I chose to quit my job and just pursue social media full-time because I felt like I was stable. And once I quit that massage job, I then picked up a new one where I found this guy who had like an arsenal of old neon signs. Like, I normally have them behind, like the neon signs you see in bars or like the open signs. And I would buy them from him at wholesale at like $40, and then whatever I could sell them for on eBay, I would make money. And I had a couple signs that I bought for like 40 bucks each, and I sold for like 400, and I did that on eBay instead of massage therapy. And that's kind of the story. The mall cannonballs, the smack cams, a bunch of sketches that got kind of big, the how to pick up strangers, or how to pick up girls, all of that stuff. And then eventually I had a friend who offered me a job to work for him full-time. He was the guy that was asking me to hire other people, and he was like, hey, come move to LA, I'll hire you full-time. And I did that. So I did that, and we still had the house in Orange County. That was, people were still paying rent. I rented out my rooms, and I was making money in the house. And I moved to LA, and eventually I terminated my agreement for that house in Orange County. Ended up losing quite a bit of money because I terminated it early. They weren't happy. They did some illegal stuff and stole a lot of money. I was supposed to get a lot of that money back. Ended up losing a decent amount of money, and on top of that, they were so pissed that they alerted someone somehow. Like, I never took them to court, but basically I wasn't done moving out. I moved everything into the garage, and the garage got robbed, which was like a lot of, like, there's a lot of neon signs still in there. There's a lot of hockey stuff that was really valuable. A lot of my tools that I was working on the cars were in there, and they just stole everything. So I ended up taking a really huge hit moving to LA, but you know, it ultimately ended up working out. I ended up living with Megan McCarthy in her guest bedroom for a little bit. Did that. She kind of was just like, Megan did me a solid. She was basically just like, pay me what you can. She was like, this is how much the room is worth, but pay me what you can, because she was aware of everything that was happening in Orange County and all that. And eventually I got a place with Zane, Heath, Scott, and Todd at Denny Ave. I brought that team together. I literally made Scott break his lease so he could move in. Like, Zane was gonna go to his own place, Heath and I were gonna get our own place, and I was like, let's just all move in together. And that's what happened. Denny Ave happened. Denny Ave ended, courtesy of our landlord finding out about our YouTube videos and started monitoring them all very closely and found any reason he could to evict us, and politely was just like, hey, if you guys don't leave, we're just gonna evict you because you guys are destroying the house. And then of course I got the house together with Sam, Colby, Corey, and Aaron, made that happen. And then you guys know why I left that house, and here I am today. Oh yeah, I forgot to talk about TFIL. Yeah, and then at Denny Ave, of course, is Vine was dying at Denny Ave, and as that was dying, I was like, okay, I'm gonna transition out, and I started Facebook videos. And my Facebook account got to like 450,000. Facebook had really, really high paying brand deals. So some crazy brand deals over there made me enough money to then start TFIO with Heath. Because Vine was dying, Heath didn't have YouTube, Heath didn't have Facebook, he was considering moving home. And I was just like, yo, like, what do you want to do, man? Like, we used to go to hockey games all the time, and I was just like, what do you want to do? And he's like, well, I want to see the Northern Lights. And I was like, cool. I had this TV show idea that I'd been pitching when I was living with Megan, called The Fuck It List, which was basically 3 people, 2 guys and a girl, that had a thing they wanted to accomplish before they died. And they would try and do that, and on the journey there, they would pull off pranks, and whoever won the prank battle would have to pay, like if you needed flights to Colorado, you'd have a prank battle and the loser had to pay for the flights. So I was like, look, let's just apply this idea. Let's just get a motorhome and travel and try and do all these things and do pranks on the way and just have fun. And that's how TFIL started, and that's where that play button came from. Down the line, I ended up starting a second channel when I lived with Sam, Colby, and Corey, and I have that guy over there. And I mean, it's where I feel like this has to be like a 30 or 40 minute video at this point. Absolutely 100% has to be a 30 or 40 minute video. I have no idea. Ultimately, the story of it all is I knew I wanted to be a chiropractor, but because I knew what that goal was, I never prevented myself from taking any opportunity, right? Because you might think you're starting here and this is where you want to go. And there is a straight line. There absolutely 100% is a straight line, because I could have just gotten my massage job, worked as a massage therapist until I could afford chiropractic school, work as a massage therapist while I'm in chiropractic school, leave massage therapy to work as like an assistant to a chiropractic office while in chiropractic school, and then become a chiropractor. There was a straight line I could have followed. But instead, I saw any opportunity I could, and I went here, and sometimes it took me over here, but I was still moving forward. I was still moving to that same goal. And ultimately, it didn't end up becoming chiropractic school or becoming a chiropractor, but ultimately, my goal with to be a chiropractor was the amount of money I thought I could make. That's why I was doing it. Like, yeah, I was interested in sports therapy and sports medicine, but ultimately, I knew it seemed like a good way to make money, and the competition wasn't too heavy, and it is a booming industry, and I slowed it down to social media. But any opportunity I had, I took it, and I wasn't on that same line of chiropractic, and I wasn't on the same line of stand-up or acting or social media or mechanic or anything, which all run parallel. They all have the same plateau. But I just took any opportunity I could, and I went at it full force, 100% with everything I could. It didn't matter, and I kept my head up the entire time, and I moved forward. And that's ultimately what the story is like, if you see an opportunity for something that's positive in your life, right? You have to make sure it's a positive opportunity. Like, I'm sure at some point I could have sold drugs. I'm sure. I was literally living with a heroin addict and like crack house. Like, they were definitely trafficking drugs, and I'm sure at some point, as someone who doesn't do any drugs and never has in their entire life, I would have been the best person for that job because I never would have touched any of it. Whatever I would have had, I would have sold, right? And I could have gone down that road. 100% could have gone down that road. Even with the Mustangs, I'm sure I could have figured out a way to sell them and rip people off, but I didn't. I took the time to actually fix them and then sell them. Instead of to sell them for a profit and find a dumb buyer, I actually fixed the problems that I found and I sold them. So I always stayed on the positive path moving forward in community college and taking an improv class, which is what led to stand-up, or getting my real estate license because it was, why not? It took like 2 semesters to get a real estate license, and I was like, okay, sure. And that's the same attitude that I'm at today with TFIL. Any chance I had when I met Sam and Colby, I was just like, yo, do you guys want to come do videos? Sam and Colby, same thing with Corey, just like, was like, Corey, do you want to come do videos? Same thing, it's been the same path the entire way through. And now I have 2 YouTube channels that would total at like 2.2 million subscribers. I have a clothing company that does really well, and we've helped raise $250,000. We've donated $120,000. We're on Warped Tour this entire summer. We're a vendor on VidCon in Anaheim, not a vendor on VidCon Australia. There's no way I'm transporting all that. I've been able to travel to 7 countries and make, you know, 236 TFIL videos. A lot of them aren't posted yet. And all of this is just because I've said yes to every opportunity I've ever seen, and I pursued them all. And I started this off, I set a timer for 10 minutes. That's how long I thought it would take to cover all this, was 10 minutes. Yeah, no, I feel like I've repeated myself quite a bit. I'm only gonna edit like 2 things out because I accidentally said someone's address. Gonna edit that out. But yeah, I mean, I was homeless in the sense that I lived in my car, because a car is not a home, it's a car. So that is all true, and I was also homeless in the factor that I was bouncing around from room rental to room rental, to couch to laundry room, to the storage shed, to the garage, to pool house rental weird thingies, like all of them. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really know how to end it. I mean, that's literally just how I got here today. I'm sure I could have structured this better and shortened it down a little bit. I'm sure I could have gotten into how exactly the Vine worked out and the rebinds for rebinds and how YouTube worked out and how we started TFIL, or how I even got to the point to move back to California and had the ability to feel comfortable making that move, because that was a huge thing. I had to be able to feel comfortable. Because prior to moving out to California, I lived in a van and also started a business when I was 15 years old. My business ended up making over $1 million gross before I was 18. So that's a whole different video if you guys want that one. Literally my life between 14 and 19 was fucking nuts. All the times I got arrested. Yeah, I don't know. Cool. I said I'd share the story. Sorry it took so long, but that's the story. I hope you guys enjoyed that super long, holy shit video. Wasn't expecting it to be that long. But I genuinely appreciate all of you guys that are watching these videos, and I apologize for not posting that often. But yeah, we do have a couple music videos coming up, 2 short films that I'm working on, and I'll see you guys all this summer on Warped Tour, and if you guys are coming to New Zealand, see you there. But yeah, I'm super grateful for all of you guys that have stuck by my side on YouTube, and people that have been watching me since Vine, and probably even seen some of the Facebook videos. It's been a hell of a journey, and the one piece of advice I will say is that if you do want to be a social media influencer, which is why I'm sure a lot of you are watching this, if you do want to be a social media influencer, again, here's the goal, right? The goal is to have that diamond play button. And here's your first post. Don't be afraid to steer off the path. Keep moving forward and take any opportunity you can, because you don't know what's going to lead you here to here. It's the same theory as like driving from New York City to Los Angeles. There's 1,000,001 ways and 1,000,001 roads you can take, and some of them are small little turns in the middle of random ass towns, and you have no idea where it's going to take you and what it's going to help teach you. I didn't know that the random ass Craigslist job that I got for a post-warranty company would end up leading to my ability to make $10,000 in 2.5 months, which led me to get my own house which led me to living in Mission Viejo, which led me to meeting Waleed and Kenny and Casey, which led me to Vine. And then Vine led me to working at this marketing agency. The marketing agency led me to living with Megan, which led me to living right next to Zane and Heath, which led me to moving in with Zane, Heath, Scotty, Todd, which led to David, and the entire vlog squad basically spawned from that house. And that entire world happened, which led to TFIL, which led to Sam and Colby and Corey, which led to me living with Sam and Colby and Corey, which led to everything that you're now seeing. Because I took one wrong turn. Or one unplanned turn. So yeah, there you have it. That's the story. I'm not really going to edit this other than the two things, so I apologize if it's super long. But you know, that was like 9 years of my life. But yeah, there you go, guys. Let me know if you guys want me to talk about any other thing. If you want this to be shorter next time, or if you want it to be longer next time. If you want another one of these at all, I have no idea. And then again, thank you to Dollar Shave Club for sponsoring me and making this video happen and helping, you know, help me take any opportunity I can. Nice. Goodbye, guys.